Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to once again have an opportunity to connect with you all. Some of you consciously for the first time. As soon as you made the decision to come, we started working with you. So you may not have had a conscious conversation with us, but we have nonetheless been working with you, and many of you yesterday. As you tried to connect to the higher realms. We heard you please, and we did what we can to assist you in the process. So we're very excited for the new frontier that you're about to step into. You're about to open up your entire world to a galactic community, and that is in part what we're here to talk about today, is you're bringing home here. Expanding your awareness so that you are once again a multi-dimensional galactic participant. And it's a subtle shift in your perception of reality. From your third dimensional mindset, it seems like night and day, but from the centered part of yourself, the expanded aware part of yourself, it's a slight shift in perspective. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. We'll stop here periodically and ask for questions, and then at the end we'll really open it up to anything that is a curiosity for you. And we suggest that as we go that you also jot down your questions. If you don't feel like it's quite the time to ask, go ahead and write them down so that you can remember, because as we're going here, you're often working with another part of your mind. We're taking you down into deeper and deeper levels. You're shifting your brain waves, and so sometimes it can feel a bit more like a lucid dream. You're not using your fully alert state of awareness. So sometimes it's hard to grasp onto those concepts. And also, when you get a bit activated, you can start to leave your body. So when you're out of your body, you can't always remember things very well. When you're feeling a bit foggy, when you're feeling a bit forgetful, these are indications that you're not fully engaged with the vehicle. So we'll try to keep things in a relatively linear fashion as best we can, as best we, well, frankly, want to, because what will happen is that when we present things in a really linear fashion, you get locked into kind of a history. But rather, we're going to go in a more circular pattern from time to time and go off on tangents to get you out of the linear mind, to get you thinking in a multi-dimensional way. We're crafty that way, that we work with you in a multi-dimensional way to activate those patternings in the brain. All right, to keep you receiving data from multiple directions in order to expand your awareness to multiple foci. All right. So everyone start here with a nice deep breath. Earth is a grand experiment. You are considered throughout the entire universe to be the planet of emotions. You have so much genetic material that has been donated to this planet from many, many different species, from many different parts of the galaxy. Many of the species that you consider to be lower species, or certainly not the primary species of the planet, they have a home world where they are the primary species. That may be a lot for you to wrap your mind around, but if you think about the insects, there are many worlds where the insects are the dominant species. And more often than not, they're much larger than what you experience on this planet. They're 20, 30 feet tall, all right, on these planets where they're the dominant species. And along with that genetic material comes all of the emotional experience, all of the history, all of the vibrational signatures of that species. And it's all encoded in the DNA. That DNA then gets downloaded, all the records get downloaded to Mother Earth. All right? So Earth is a library or a keeper for all of those experiences for all the species on the planet. Now, what that gives you is a huge range of emotional experience. So that's why we call this the planet of emotion. You've got extremely high highs and extremely low lows. On this planet, there are many, many variations of your emotion that you label as love. The kind of love that you have for a friend, the kind you have for a family member, the kind you have for a teacher, the kind you have for a lover, the kind you have for a spouse. All right, there are varying shades to this emotion that you label as love. Now, in other parts of the galaxy, on other systems, they're not interested in exploring the variations, so they kind of lump it all together. There's one big bandwidth of frequency. They don't parse it out the way that you experience it here. In addition, in your lower end, you also have a huge variation. All right, so it's not just fear. All right, you parse it out and have different shades and experiences. This makes this planet, because you have such extremes, a very challenging one often to be on. All right, as you all may agree, it can feel rather intense. So simply to be on a planet with so much emotion would be intense, but then also to be in density and to forget who and what you are can make it even more challenging. Now, about 300,000 years ago on this planet, you had the awareness that you were multidimensional beings playing a game in density. But one of the things you were having difficulties with was maintaining density, that you kept remembering that you were a multidimensional being and you would pop out of density into a multidimensional perspective. In the third dimensional realm, part of the setup, part of the game is that you have a linear perspective and that you're not viewing the timelines that are going on concurrently. So you think that you're only on one timeline and you experience it from start to finish. In reality, there are multiple timelines that are going on, one right beside another, and you're constantly moving back and forth between them based on your vibrational signature and the one that you're aligning with. But the brain is seeing it only as one experience, one timeline. So 300,000 years ago, one of the ways that you set up for yourself, and you all set up the game. This was not something that was done necessarily to you. 300,000 years ago, this was the decision that you all made. You said, let's create a program that can run some of these attachments that will keep us in density so we don't keep popping out. So you created the mind. All right, the illusion of the mind. So what happened as you start to play in the illusionary mind and you start to drop out of frequency, it becomes exponential. All right, the more you forget, the faster you forget, the more you forget, the faster you forget. And you descended pretty quickly. It wasn't quite the anticipated result. You were surprised and a bit shocked by how quickly it did indeed happen. And then as you're coming up out of it here, as you're going through the process of ascension, the very same thing occurs. All right, you find things are accelerating. The more you are aware, the faster you grow, the more you are aware of. The same thing happens on the other end. So here you are on the planet of emotion, the grand petri dish, if you will, of the galaxy. And this game was set up in part because in other sectors of the galaxy you were playing a more localized game where the expressions weren't as extreme. So finding solutions to the process of integration, this was the grand setup. That you wanted to learn how to integrate duality, you wanted to learn how to take light and dark and remove all judgment. You weren't working it out very well. It was very, very challenging for you. You didn't have as many options and possible solutions or emotions to work through. In some sectors of the galaxy, you destroyed worlds, you destroyed civilizations, and even in the Sirius star system, you destroyed a star, Sirius C. That's been destroyed on several different timelines through the misuse of weapons. So when you couldn't all work it out there, all right, the Arcturian system had its fair share of disputes. All right, they were trying to work out this issue of working with science versus technology, science and technology versus the inner technology. All right, so the outer versus the inner. So that game got explored in the Arcturus system. When you couldn't work it out there, you decided to send representatives from those systems here to Earth. and said, all right, let's see if we can work it out on the smaller scale on a planet that has more and more emotions. All right, there are more options for you. Yes, that can mean it can be a bit more challenging, but maybe you can work it out that way. And so many of you, as you are starting to reawaken, are remembering your connections to these other star systems, that you came as a representative of that system to work on the specific issues of that system. Everybody take a nice deep breath. So we're going to take a little time here to talk about some of the systems here in just a moment. But before we get into that, we also want you to know that you yourself, each and every one of you, is a spark of divine source energy. You aren't really a being from another star system. That is another aspect of you, but that is not the whole version of you. That is not the larger version of you. The larger version of you is divine source energy. And that part of you that's in the Sirius star system or the Orion star system or the Pleiades, that's an aspect that you are aligning with. All right, so it's not really who you are. Do you all get that? Yes. Because oftentimes as you start to awaken, you assign or reassign your personality, your definition of who you are with that system. And it will change from time to time as you go. You may find for a while you feel drawn to one particular system or another. Now, with the Sirius star system, since we're starting there, why not? It's a system that is incredibly, incredibly diverse with lots of different species, lots of different objectives, lots of different, frankly, dimensional ranges where beings are existing. And they can move back and forth. Most of the time, they tend to stay within their own dimension. You have a lot of diversity, but also a lot of conflict because of this diversity. There is the either-or mentality, which is something that you are really, really working to integrate right now, that it's not about a choice between one or the other, that one has to extinguish the other in order to exist, that you see that both are valid choices, valid expressions, and that both can harmoniously exist. So there was a lot of persecution in the Sirius star system because cultures were threatened. They thought, well, here's this other culture across the way, and they have a different belief, and if we don't extinguish them, they're going to threaten ours. We won't be able to maintain our way of life. So we've got to go to war. And this is a great deal of what happened in the Sirius star system. Now, competition is also a big issue coming from the Sirius star system. There is also a lot of beauty, quite frankly, that exists within the Sirius star system. There are planets who really, really appreciate that. You've got some really wonderful water worlds that are filled with frequency keepers, if you will. They're there to anchor frequency within the Sirius star system. That's why those worlds were set up, and many of those beings who are frequency keepers have come to your planet. The dolphins, the whales, the sea creatures in general. All right, many of them are from the Sirius star system. Some are also from the Arcturus star system, and we'll get to that here in a bit. But they are keepers of frequency. And so all of these different planets are set up to kind of balance out the game. When you find that you're having difficulty and not able to work through the game, a new planet or a new civilization may be created to try to work through that in a new way. So the Orion system, which you all recognize the constellation of Orion in the night sky, it is also very, very similar to the Sirius system in its diversity. They've got a lot of technological wisdom. They have a pretty good understanding of mathematics and the basic workings of the universe. They are adventuresome. They're curious. They want to explore. They want to expand. So who do they go to? Their neighbor Sirius. And again, this gets played out. So there's a lot of warring and a lot of, I've got to protect my own space that kind of vibration that's going on between Sirius and the Orion system. But again, in Orion, there's a lot of diversity. You've got a lot of feline, all right? So if you would imagine a cat, all right, but they're humanoid, meaning they're a bit of a hybrid, if you will. If you want to think of it that way, they're not really. But in your minds, it's easier for you to think of the human body combined with a cat. All right, so they're present and working quite a bit in that system. Then you've got other parts of the galaxy, such as the Lyran and Arcturan systems. Those are similarly linked. The Arcturans work with tone and sound quite frequently. When you get up into the higher dimensions, in the 8th and 9th dimensions, you'll find most in the 8th. It's the most highly populated, if you will, sector of space within the Arcturus star system, and they are working with the language of light. This also occurs in other star systems, but the Arcturans are proficient at the use of the language of light. We consider them to be, or they are dubbed as, the ambassadors of the universe. They're universal ambassadors because they work with the language of light. And they have spent a lot of time integrating a lot of their own issues, all right, such as the one that we talked about earlier with the inner technology versus the outer technology. And that energy goes on in some of the lower dimensions in that system, all right. So those who are in the higher have kind of worked through it and worked their way up. Now this is a bit of a mind bender for you, so we want first everybody to take a nice deep breath. You think, well, how is that possible that you've got beings who are on the lower dimension and the higher dimension, but they work their way up? Does that take eons and eons and eons? You're thinking in linear time. So a being can project itself anywhere it wants to at any point in time, in quote-unquote history, if you will. You're picking a story and you're projecting yourself into it. So you can have the future and the past existing at the same time. So what would considered to be the lower levels, the lower dimensional frequencies, could be considered from your linear perspective as a past version, and the higher realms would be the future version, if you will, all right, as they've gone through this process to learn and grow and expand. Now the beings in the Arcturus system who are working with tone and sound, they are fairly well integrated, meaning they don't have a lot of charges in their field. So when they work, and they work quite a bit with the Sirius and Orion systems, when they go to arbitrate disputes, to work with these other beings in the lower dimensions, they aren't charged. So if they're having a conversations with the Sirians aren't activated, because there's nothing to push against, because they're still operating through the laws of attraction. Now, when you get up into the higher realms, it's more immediate manifestation, but still most of these are happening at the 5th dimensional level. And so they are not charged in the same way, so they're not creating and manifesting the same kind of response as if two people who had a difficult time communicating, because each had that attraction in their field, they wouldn't be able to express it. Each would be getting activated, and they would have to make a shift, one of them at least, in their perception of reality in order to release that charge, in order to communicate in an effective way. Well, when the Arcturans step in and they work with tone and sound, they help to allow that clear expression between the parties. Do you understand what we're saying? So this is part of what goes on in the Arcturus system. They're also very proficient at healing, because they understand frequency. They're proficient at frequency, and they are very good at the very subtlest of frequency. All right, so if something is ever so slightly different, they're going to recognize it, where other species may not. All right. The Lyrans are very good with working with mathematics. Most of the Lyrans are hanging out, for the most part, in the 7th dimension. Now, they're very good with working with universal structure, understanding natural laws, understanding the physics of it, the mathematics of it. They also work with healing because they understand the resonant frequencies, and they also understand the manipulation of it. They have that knowledge and wisdom to offer. Now, your Lemurian society was originally seeded by Lyrans. All right? There were two different parties, if you will, in the Lyran star system, well back in the history, that had disputes of their own about how they wanted to work, how they wanted to operate, and some left the Lyran star system and came to Earth to play around and to explore in the Earth plane. Now, your Lemurian society was much higher in frequency. It was not third dimensional. And again, they had the ability to recognize, remember that they were multidimensional beings. They worked with the keepers of frequency. They worked with the whales and the dolphins and also the mer people. And as the game progressed, many of them decided that they didn't want to continue to participate. So many of them went back through the ascension process, and many of them went back to the Lyran star system. So that knowledge and wisdom that came from there about working with mathematics, about working with the natural laws of the universe, that information is encoded in your planetary libraries because of these beings who came and descended into matter. Some continued on from the Lemurian system and integrated into the Atlantean system. But again, the vibration was dropping further and further and further, so much of the knowledge was diluted because the full breadth of the frequency couldn't be maintained. You couldn't hold it in the vehicle because it was too much. The data was being filtered out. Because remember, the mind can only take so much data. So you also have the Pleiades. And we are from what you would consider to be your future, if you will, if you're looking at it from a linear perspective. We are learning from you. There are also other Pleiadians who are fifth dimensional who are interacting with you, and this is what you would consider to be your reptilians. Some of those who are doing a bit of shape-shifting and doing a bit of naughtiness, if you will, who are playing in the darker realms, who are doing a bit of manipulation, and they're doing you a service. It's helping you all to learn more and more about discernment. So in the Pleiades, we focus on being guides. We focus on being guardians. And here you have the darker extreme. Remember, when you go up in dimensional structure, you still have duality. This is a universe based on duality. But the extremes aren't as far apart. So the light isn't, you don't have the white and black, but rather you have the ranges more shades of gray. Right? You don't go to those huge extremes. And you've got some Pleiadians who are still working on, rather than teaching, they're manipulating. All right, so they're using the other end of the spectrum. And that's our past, what we would consider to be our past. And here we are working with you because we want to learn, we want to teach, and we want to assist. So much of the genetic material that was donated came from the Pleiades. Many of the souls who incarnated came from the Pleiades because the goal and the effort in that system was to learn to teach and to mentor. So where best are you going to go? The planet of emotion, to the planet that has this whole huge range of genetic material. There's no better petri dish, if you will, to examine than Earth, if you want to teach and work with the rest of the galaxy. And this is why you've got so many of your ancient societies, many of your Aboriginal societies who recall that this is where they come from, that they're seeded from the Pleiades. So we've been around for quite a while, helping and assisting. Earth is not the only planet that we were guardians for. There are other star systems and other planets that we also kind of see and maintain and assist. We watch from afar, and that many of us have seeded. So other systems that are also playing a part here, you've got the Draconian system, and literally there were dragons on your planet. All right, there still are a few that are underground. The Draconians are very family oriented, they're very bloodline oriented. It's important to them. The positive aspect of it is that you've got a built-in support system. The negative aspect of it is that if you're not part of the family, you're an outsider, and it's very, very hard to get in. So there's a lot of rivalry, a lot of competition that also comes in that culture. All right, so that energy is present on your planet. The other star system, the other major star system that is a player, if you will, for the planet Earth is you've got the Andromeda Galaxy. There are a few beings who cross over from there, but you've also got Cassiopeia, all right, planets in the Cassiopeian star system, and the Cassiopeian star system works with love. They are very peaceful people in that system. They are builders of harmony. They're really proficient at working with harmony rather than unison. What you are creating and generating for yourself it's not about creating something that is identical across the board for all of you. This is not about being in unison. This is about you all learning to be in harmony, that each and every one of you holds a unique frequency, but it plays well with the other frequencies. Do you all get that? Yeah. It'd be really boring to all be the same frequency. What's the point? The point, as you came through the dissension process, as you fractured from source energy, was to go forth and experiment, to go forth and explore, try new frequencies. So what you're really working with is harmony. So there are a few of you who have come from the Cassiopeian system in this room. And what we ask you to do right now is to check in with yourself and see where you think you've been. Which star systems do you feel like you are aligning with personally? All right, so take a nice deep breath here. And see yourself aligning with your stellar home, if you will. It's not really a home, but it is a place where there is a part of you that you wish to recognize and acknowledge and bring forth here to you. And continue to breathe deeply. And as you breathe, you wish to affirm that you are once again connecting with those stellar origins, and that you are integrating the knowledge and wisdom that you wish to impart, that you wish to share with the planet, into your field, into your conscious awareness. And so it is. So, we're going to go ahead and ask if you have any questions about this part, about some of these other realms and dimensions and other star systems.
I have a question. We're in the third dimension now.
Yes.
And these, some of these other star systems are already in the ninth. Correct?
Some, mainly the Arcturus, and there are a few there. Most of what you're working with, and the Pleiades here, most of what you are pulling in and accessing is understanding from physicality. So most of the lifetimes that you're going to align with are going to be somewhere between 3 and 5. There are a few that are going to be somewhere between 7 and 9. And those are primarily going to be in the Lyran, Arcturan, and the Pleiades. That's the wisdom and knowledge that you bring forth.
So we're not necessarily working to get to that ninth dimension. I mean, we'll just be lucky if we get to 5, right?
Well, as humans right now, what you're trying to do is transmute your frequency. You're trying to upgrade your frequency to the 5th dimensional level. So what you're really trying to do is take this conscious awareness of who you are, being on this planet with so many emotions, and letting go of all of the fears to get yourself up to a multidimensional level, which begins at the 4th, and then eventually into the 5th. so that you can once again start to interact with your galactic community. The object of the game here this time around isn't about you leaving your body and going home. It's about you grounding all of this knowledge and wisdom that you've gained out in the galaxy into this particular vehicle. So you're bringing that sense of home here. That sense of home that you all start to experience as you wake up, and what you are really longing for is your connection to Source. It's not for another star system. There may be some memories that you have of times that were simply just much easier, where it wasn't so hard, that life wasn't a struggle, where you had beautiful atmospheres that when you waved your hand, you played music. Or that you have planets that were water worlds and you spent your days underwater creating symphonies or playing, exploring, and things were just much lighter and much easier. But what you're really longing for is that sense of connection, that sense of connection with source energy where you feel supported and loved and complete. So the more that you work with your connection to the divine, and we'll talk about this a bit later, the easier it's going to become for you to bring all of that information, all of that knowledge, all of that wisdom here and integrate it into the vehicle. The name of the game this go-round was Descension and Reascension. It was the integration of your higher self into the vehicle. That's what you all are really doing. That expanded part of yourself that knows about all of those other lifetimes and all of those other systems, that higher self. That's the part of you that you are becoming more and more aware of. That will be the part of you that is in the vehicle. The state of awareness that you have. You're going to remove the illusions that the ego has of who you think you are and become that expanded sense of awareness to say, oh yes, I had that life in the Sirius star system, or oh yes, I was in the Pleiades and I worked on this, and this is what I learned from that experience. So how do I apply it now to this life? How do I want to integrate it? Before we go too far here, we want to make sure we've answered your question first. Does that help? You all have a pre-shift and a post-shift blueprint. All right, so there is a blueprint or a roadmap, if you want to think of it that way, for your life in the third dimensional realm. How you wanted to go through this process of ascension, what main things you wanted to work on. And then you make contracts with other beings. And you say to them, all right, I'm going down to Earth and I'm not going to remember this, so please, check in on me. Those are the contracts that you make with beings in the higher realms. And then with those who are in the physical realm with you, you also make contracts and say, all right, I want to work on love addiction. All right, I want to work on abandonment. And they say, oh, that'd be fun. I'll do that with you. I have that to work on. I haven't been able to integrate that yet, so let's give that a go. All right? So you make that contract and you say, all right, I'm going to work on this first, and then I will meet you at this time and in this place. And they say, all right, well, if I'm late, go on without me. All right, so you'll set up a backup contract with someone else and say, all right, well, my friend's supposed to meet me, but if they can't, will you? And this is how it goes. And these are your contracts. And you're constantly writing and rewriting these contracts. They're not eternally binding. You all think of contracts here as very solid and immutable. In the higher realms, we think of it more as a date or a meeting, an appointment. It's like meeting a friend for coffee, as we say. If you can't go, it's not a big deal. They'll meet up with someone else. And that's just the way it goes. So you're constantly making these and shifting and altering. This is what you do when you're outside of your body at night. Part of what you do anyway. You're communicating with your friends and saying, this isn't really working. How do you think we can rework this? All right, so you kind of manipulate that. And so you've got this set of objectives, if you will, things that you want to try to integrate pre-third dimensional shift. Then there's a whole other set on the other side once you shift, because literally you had to create a new blueprint for yourself because the game completely changes. You go from this limited aspect of yourself that doesn't realize that it's a multidimensional being, that there's more beyond what you see in front of your eyes, All right, so that's got to have a particular set of rules and regulations and objectives and that kind of thing. And then once you shift and you remember that you're an expanded being, you change the game. So the kinds of things that you want to experience are very, very different. So this is part of what you are also arranging when you're out of your body, is this next step, this next adventure. And we want to start encouraging you to start dreaming about it more, to start fantasizing about it more. You all are very focused on 2012. All right, so we suppose we should talk about that for just a moment. 2012 is a window of opportunity. It is not an exact cutoff date. For a while we told you that's what it was because the mind just couldn't handle anything else. It's really a window of opportunity. And you all gave yourselves a date because you are so entrenched in time, and if you hadn't given yourself a date, you probably wouldn't have gotten activated. You say, well, I've got more time, there's no worries, I'll do it at the end. All right, you put it off. So giving yourselves a date got you motivated and got you moving. Time's an illusion, so you all are going to shift when you're ready. There will come a point in time in which Mother Earth will fully remove her energy from the third dimension. All right, it is a flexible time. Most of you will not be on those timelines at that point. You will be off on higher vibrational timelines that put you into the fourth dimensional range. Some of you on the fifth. And let us say now, because we already see this going on in your minds, well, which am I going to be on, the fourth or the fifth? One is not better than the other. Some of you may go to the fifth and say, well, I wish I would have stopped off at the fourth to get to practice and play. So there are benefits to being in both. And you know, there's no right or wrong. And there's no need to be in a rush to get to the higher realms. You already know what the higher realms are like because there are other aspects of you playing in those arenas. What you don't know, what none of us in the universe have ever experienced, is what you are going through right now. This process of ascension that you are undertaking on a planet that is going through ascension has never ever happened before, let alone the fact that Earth is the grand experiment with all of this genetic material. So how you get there, how you go through the process of integration is unique, and you're finding the way to do it. We can't tell you how to do it because we're not in dense bodies. We can give you some ideas, but you're the ones who have to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Now let us say here, because we already see some little flags going up, what is integration? Integration is simply letting go of all judgment. That you're not seeing anything in an extreme of duality, that you see that both light and dark are part of source energy. It is that full awareness of the unity of both. And when you get to that level or that state of awareness, you drop all judgment, and that's what you all are doing as you go through the process of integration. You're just simply letting go of judgment and seeing it as divine. And it's just a frequency. It's not right or wrong. It just is. Simple. Yes? So we'll take a breath here and see if you've got any questions about what we've chatted on so far.
This is going to happen in our lifetimes?
Yes. Yes.
So you're sort of not going through a death cycle this
Yes.
lifetime?
Yes. Yes.
What will that look like to everyone?
Well, it depends on where you're vibrating. There are beings on this planet who were not interested in going along for the multidimensional ride. All right, they weren't interested in going through the ascension process, but they wanted to be here because they didn't want to go play in the fourth or fifth dimensional realm. They just wanted to be in the third. And they wanted to be here at this time so that they could learn some of the lessons, so that when they decided to go through the ascension process, they had those records in the field. They also do a service for humanity, because if you got everything all at once, if there weren't beings who were holding lower vibrational frequencies, it would be incredibly intense for you. So in some ways, many of them are keepers of frequency. They're just holding a lower frequency to help keep a pace, so that it wasn't so intense for those of you who wanted to go through the ascension process. And that's something that you never ever think about. You all say, well, isn't the goal for everybody to go? Well, no. The goal for some is simply to hold frequency, to hold resonance. And they will go through a death process. The majority of them. There are some that will simply go through a transition and go to another planet. They're not going to necessarily die in a traditional sense, and that will be at the very, very end. And it's not that any of you are going to be standing around to witness this. All right, it is part of the, it's more like a fade out. As Earth removes her energy from the third dimension. She's just done. She's done everything that she could in the third dimension. So she's just moving on. All right. It's like leaving the third grade and moving into the fourth grade. You're just done with it. You learned everything you could, and now you're going to go on to a new classroom. And that's what Mother Earth will do. But for those who are staying in the third dimensional realm, they will go to a planet that has a similar paradigm. They will project themselves there and continue on in the third dimensional game, rich with all of the information gathered on Earth. Now, for those who are going into the higher realms, who are going through the process of ascension, no, you're not going to go through a death cycle. It's not required. Death is only required because of density, because of the extremes of the emotion that you experience here. When you get locked into those negative emotions, what happens at the cellular level, the cells can't repair. They start to move through time and space at a slower rate, and so they appear to decay. They're not really going backwards. They're just not moving forward as quickly as the rest of you, because frequencies don't move through time and space at the same rate. The higher you go in frequency, the faster you experience time. This is why you feel like you have the accelerated day, why your 24-hour day is 12 hours now. So as you go through the ascension process, depending on where your frequency is and how far you choose to leap ahead, it's going to make a difference on how it looks, how you experience it. Most of you will be going into the fourth dimensional realm. The fourth dimensional realm is a transitory zone. All right? It's not a place where you will stay for very long. Now, we're giving you information that is framed in a linear perspective so that the mind can grasp it. In reality, when you step across that dimensional barrier, time ceases to exist. So if we were to tell you you're going to stay in the fourth dimension for 60 years, 120 years, that would just be something for the linear mind. Because in the fourth dimensional realm, time ceases to exist. Take a breath. And you get to where you want to go when you want to be there. You project yourself to a point. Time is simply a marker so that you know where to find an event. That's all it is. And here in the third dimensional realm, you put one event after another, and you simply go in linear sequence. In the other realms, you can go wherever you want. You can project yourself wherever you want. Take a breath.